Good afternoon on this very hot Kansas afternoon all across the state. We want to welcome you all to this afternoon's Connecting Kansas Counties, July's featured presentation, a forward look at local ad valorem tax reduction, or fondly or not so fondly known as LAVTR for Kansas counties. This presentation will provide a look at the local ad valorem tax reduction, past, present, and future for Kansas County government. The past will provide a look back at when LAVTR was created, how long it was funded, and why it is no longer in use. The present will shed light on the current movement forward to restore LAVTR, and the near future will showcase the LAVTR toolkit that KAC has created to assist you in talking with and educating your staff, external audiences, including legislators, media, and the public, on the value and importance of LAVTR funding for Kansas County government and for your constituents. Today's presentation is presented by Bruce Cladney, KAC's Executive Director, and Mike Taylor, KCCA's lobbyist and owner of Strategy Consultants. We are recording today's webinar so that for those who could not make it, we'll be able to share the webinar recording with them. As well, I would ask that if you have not done it, please take a moment and type your name, your Kansas County organization, and your title in the chat box, just so we know who's on this afternoon. And as well, throughout the presentation, please go ahead and type any questions you may have in the chat box, because that's how we will be able to see those and address those, hopefully, in today's presentation. So with that, I am going to turn over the proverbial microphone to Mike Taylor, and he is going to kick us off.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a topic that, for those of you that have been around for a while, may know about or maybe have heard about. We haven't gotten the funding for more than 20 years, so we're going to kind of do a quick educational update so all of you know what we're talking about when we talk about the local ad valorem tax reduction fund, or LAVTR. Under LAVTR, a portion of sales tax dollars collected by the state of Kansas are shared with city and county governments. It's a law that is being broken by the Kansas legislature. Those funds are directly applied, or supposed to be directly applied, to lowering property taxes. It's a time-tested partnership that started actually in its original form back in 1937. It was canceled in 2003. It would provide dollar-for-dollar reductions in property tax bills that your counties have to send out. From 2004 through 2022, local governments have lost more than $1.7 billion in legally owed revenues that are being withheld by the Kansas legislature. And again, every one of those dollars would have gone toward lowering property taxes. We believe at KAC and Kansas County Commissioners Association that the LAVTR partnership is a far better way to influence property tax rates than artificial and arbitrary controls such as tax and spending lids on local governments, or some kind of arbitrary cap on appraisal values. We think restoring LAVTR would benefit every taxpayer in Kansas. But LAVTR is not the only promised and legally owed revenues not being paid to cities and counties. There is the Special City County Revenue Sharing Fund. That was established in 1978 as part of an agreement between local governments and the state of Kansas. Local governments gave up collecting local cigarette and liquor taxes in exchange for getting a percentage of the money returned by the state. The Kansas legislature has broken this contract since 2001, and it's cost local governments, cities and counties, more than $1.3 billion in owed revenue. Doesn't stop there. There's the Special City County Highway Fund. It's another legally owed amount of money the Kansas legislature has not paid since 2001. The money comes from the property tax on motor vehicles, which is collected by counties. Local governments have lost more than $412 million in legally obligated funding as a result of the legislature illegally withholding these funds. And I'll mention one other possibility when casinos were first brought to the state, it was discussed and listed as one of the possible ways to use some of those revenues was to send it back to local governments, a share of it back to local governments for property tax relief. The casinos are doing well, the lottery's doing well. This would not include the sports betting, but that's another source of revenue that could potentially be used for restarting LAVTR and paying some of these other funds. So to add it all up, total dollars owed but not paid to cities and counties since 2001 equals $3.5 billion. Let me say that again, $3.5 billion that the legislature has, in our view, illegally withheld from cities and counties. I'll kind of pause there. Well, let me mention one more thing that did happen. Well, two more things, actually, that if you go back in history. So in 2006, the Kansas legislature repealed the property tax on commercial industrial machinery and equipment. That decision, while it was positive for businesses, took a devastating toll on many cities and counties. I know, being here in Wyandotte County, that the first year that tax was eliminated, Wyandotte County lost $132 million in assessed value. Boom, just like that. The legislature, understanding that, started what they called, it was called the Siegfried Slider, named after the legislator who proposed this. And the whole idea was to help counties ease off of not getting that revenue. The state would send back a percentage, and then it would slide down to zero after a few years. Well, they made two payments, and it was supposed to last several years. They made two payments, and then they just cut off that funding as well. So that's another funding source that counties lost. The other one is the mortgage revenue tax, which money was used designated legally to go toward parks and recreation. They eliminated the mortgage revenue tax as well. So there's just a whole string in the past 20 years of revenues that counties and local governments used to receive that we no longer receive. I think our point now is that the state of Kansas has budget surpluses totaling billions of dollars. They can well afford now to restart paying the money that they've taken from us over those years illegally. Again, I keep saying illegally because it's in statute that most of those funds, LAVTR particularly, should be paid. They just choose not to every year. So I'm saying, and sort of a phrase that I've come up with is, keep the promise and restore the partnership. I'll stop there, Kim, in case there are any other questions, or we can turn it over to Bruce to pick it up from there.
I don't see any questions as of yet, so why don't we go ahead, and Bruce, if you'd like to take it over.
Okay. Well, thank you again, guys. And it's great to look in and see who's all here. This is a who's who of local county government. And I'm very appreciative of all of you to take time out of your day to join us this afternoon for this webinar that Kim has put together. And we appreciate all of her efforts and all the things that she does for the KAC organization and for you all that are listening in today. So why are we here? So why are we picking on LAVTR of all the different broken promises, as Mike kept saying? Are we picking on LAVTR? Well, if you watch the Kansas legislature this past spring, during the budget discussion, the House Minority Leader, Vic Miller, he proposed an amendment to the state budget that would once again jumpstart LAVTR funding. This was during the debate on the floor. He called out an amendment, and lo and behold, that amendment actually passed in the House. They had 83 votes, Democrats and Republicans, urban folks, rural folks, north, south, east, west, a wide variety of people saw the value and the importance of once again funding LAVTR for local county government. They had 40 against, 83 for. And so that was kind of the proverbial spark, if you will. If you've ever gone out camping before and you try to get a fire started, and what happens with your fire starter, you make a little spark, and sure enough, it may or may not catch. So you do it again. Well, in this particular case, that spark did not catch. They did pass in the House to attach the amendment, but during the full budget discussion or during the conference committee, that was one of the items that was removed because there's really not a whole lot of support in the House at the leadership level and at the state, or excuse me, in the Senate at the leadership level. So that's what we're trying to do today, is we're trying to bring everybody on board so that we can create an awareness across the board, not only with you folks that are on the call today, but with all of your friends, your family, your relatives, anybody that lives in Kansas, as Mike alluded to, has a stake or has a benefit to LAVTR funding. And so what we're trying to accomplish is to go the route of getting the word out to the masses, if you will. We've got between now and January to do that. And so what we are going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is unveiling, and so you all actually are the first group to see what we've put together, a toolbox, if you will, a toolkit that will make available a wide variety of information, videos, things like that, that you can use not only to educate yourselves about LAVTR funding, but also to push out and share with anybody that will listen, so that once we hit the legislative session in the spring or in January, there's already a buzz that people are starting to ask, what is LAVTR and how come we're not funding it? So that's what we're attempting to do. So with that said, what I'd like to do is take us over to the website, our KAC website. If you're not familiar with it, it's kansascounties.org. And here you'll see across the red bar, the banner bar, under legislative tab, you'll see this legislative toolkit for Kansas counties, and you slide over, and that's where you're going to find the local ad valorem tax reduction tools. We also have some other items there that we've already posted for this past legislative session, tips for talking to your legislative representative, sample committee testimony, because we all know that from time to time, we ask you to engage in offering testimony during these hearings that we monitor for you all. And then also there's some information there on constitutional home rule, which was one of the issues that we were going to take up last year, and decided it probably wasn't the right time to be doing that. But we do feel that the local ad valorem tax reduction, this is the right time for that. So when you click on that tab and scroll down, you'll see a whole host of pieces of information that we have posted already, and we're going to continue to post and develop and make available. And I'll just talk about each one of them here briefly. The first button, the first tab that you see here, the ad valorem tax reduction articles series. What is LAVTR? Part 2 is history lesson. History lesson, and then learning from loss. If you are a regular reader of our county comment newsletter that we put out, Jay has been writing articles the past 2 months, and this will be the third month that he writes about LAVTR. The first month he wrote about kind of the history of LAVTR and how it came about. And Mike alluded to, this dates back to the 1930s, actually, during the Great Depression. The state had extra funds and said, we need to stabilize our local county government. And so they actually started pushing money out to the local county government. And that partnership has just grown and blossomed over the years up until 2003, when they decided that they could no longer afford to send money out to the counties and cut us off. Then we talk about kind of some lessons learned and how we lost that money and so on and so forth. And then this next month that Kim's getting ready to put together and push out to you here in the next couple of weeks, Jay's article is going to be talking about where do we go from here? What do we do? How do we engage our citizens, our fellow residents and our neighbors and friends and family? And this toolkit is going to be the centerpiece of that discussion. So just know that you're kind of getting a sneak peek behind the scenes view of what we're working on. So I encourage you to read those articles if you haven't already read them in the county comment newsletter. Then we talk about this is a video that was put together. It's a narrated PowerPoint presentation. So one of the suggestions that we had heard from the county commissioners a couple of months ago when we were together at their spring conference was, is there some sort of way to put together an animated or a narrated PowerPoint presentation that kind of talks about LAVTR funding? So it's about a 7 or an 8 minute long video. I encourage you to, at your leisure, go ahead and click on that link and it'll take you right to the YouTube channel and it'll play the video for you, where you can kind of get a better idea of what we're talking about. Once again, it steps us through the history of LAVTR, how it was formed, how it was lost, and where we go from here. Then Mike has put these talking points together for you folks. So for those of you that are on the Kansas County Commissioners Association distribution page or emails, you will be getting these here shortly. And so Mike has done a great job of putting together some talking points. So people, when you're visiting with your legislators, kind of just step you through, what do we need to talk about? What are the high points? What's the information that we need to know? That's where you're going to have some good information here. Then there's a couple of videos that I put together. They're called doodlies. If you've ever watched videos online and you see kind of those artwork where the animated characters are kind of being sketched out, that's called doodly. And so I put a couple of those together for us to use, and they're just basically background information. There's more information because these are all the things that we hear legislators as well as citizens complain about and talk about and have concerns about. So this particular one called Kansas County Collection of Property Tax, where does the money go? In that particular one, we kind of talk about, counties collect all of the money for all of these taxing authorities across the state, but we don't keep but a small percentage of those funds to actually fund local government. And so that's always been a point of contention for folks, is because people complain because your name and your county's name and the treasurer is on that bill, but we all know that the county is only keeping, in some instances, 30, 40, maybe 50% of those dollars that they collect, and the remaining portion goes to the other 3,900 taxing authorities across the state. You heard me right. There's almost 4,000 taxing authorities across the state of Kansas. So the 105 counties are a very small portion of those authorities. And so when we're collecting those dollars, most of that money gets pushed out to all these other authorities. And so that's the message that we're trying to reiterate with that video, is that, hey, we're not the bad guy, folks. We're just collecting the money and sharing it with other people. So that needs to be definitely something that you're aware of and something that you're promoting amongst those people that have issues with you collecting those dollars. Then there's another video that we put together called Understanding Your Property Tax Bill. And this one talks a little bit about how property taxes are calculated, what is a mill, and how that's generated, and so on and so forth, because not everybody really truly understands that the house that they live in has a value, but that value is not what they pay the taxes on. They pay their taxes on the assessed value of the home. And so we kind of make that distinction, because people get all up in arms that, hey, the property value jumped up way high. However, you're still only paying a percentage on the assessed value. And so it does influence your tax bill. And then also we talk about how the mill levy can come down once those property values go up, so that counties kind of collect about the same amount of money that they did. And so there's this yin and this yang going on. And so that's what this video talks about. So I encourage you to watch that. That's about a 4 or 5 minute video. And then finally, we have one more called What is a Mill? And that one is narrated by our own Dornella Leal here in the office. And she does a great job of talking about how mills are calculated and what the importance of a mill is, because it can be confusing for citizens and most people don't realize what exactly a mill is. And so that's what this video is designed to do, is kind of raise that awareness so people understand. So as we move through the toolkit, the toolbox here, we also have a couple of other pieces for you to use. And the one here, this came out of another request from a couple of commissioners, like I said, in the springtime when we were together. And they were very adamant about writing letters to the editor. So we would love to see all of you take up arms and write some sort of educational, informational letter of advocacy to editors of the local newspapers and other media outlet that you are familiar with. And so here's a sample support letter that you can use. You don't have to use it word for word. We laid it out so you could plug in some of your local information. There's boxes there for you to add your information and add your specific activities and some of the things that you're doing to monitor the cost of doing business. And then also we've also left a spot there where you can talk about LAVTR funding and what exactly that means for you, because there is actually dollar amounts. And so that takes me to this last one here called the mill calculation formula for LAVTR. And let me stop sharing for just a second and pick a different thing to show you here. So we're going to share this. So what we have created, Jay worked on this and myself worked on this, and we've got this, I think, working fairly well. This is an actual calculator for those LAVTR funds in real time. So like Mike had alluded to, back in 2002, which is the most recent numbers that we have, the state legislature was supposed to send to us 3.6% of the state's sales and use taxes to the cities and the counties. Well, if they did, that was $128,300,027. So when you plug that in, and the legislative research folks did this, did the kind of the behind the scenes work for us, and they calculated the assessed valuation, then did the math on what percentage that of the whole is. So actually, if you took column C and went all the way down to the bottom, that would equal 1, because that means that's the percentage that your county is getting of those LAVTR funds. Okay. And so in real dollars, this is how much it would be. And this is what the mill equivalent that those dollars would mean. So what that means is in the letter to the article, into the letter of the editors, we actually have a space there where you could say that if the government, if the state government had sent to us the total amount that they were supposed to, that would have meant $522,181.11 to Allen County, which is the equivalent of 3.1 mills. Why is that important? Because like Mike alluded to, that is a dollar for dollar reduction in the mill collection that the counties have to collect or can legally collect. So when they go ahead and set their budgets, they have to, off the top, reduce that collection amount by this LAVTR amount, which equates to a 3.1 mil reduction in the collection that the citizens are going to be collected. So it's really a tool that people can use to say, well, how's that going to lower my taxes? Well, you can see it's going to lower it by 3 mills or $522,000. So that's what we're doing here. So this number can be changed to anything. So whatever the legislature decides to put in for us, we can change that number, and it's automatically going to recalculate instantly how much of a reduction that's going to be for each county of the 105 counties across the state of Kansas. Okay, so that's what we have so far posted. Okay, so some of the other stuff that we are continuing to work on, let me go back to the share screen, and some of the other stuff that we're continuing to work on is that we are in the process of right now of working with a professional company who puts together videos, and we are in the processes of going out, and we have recorded interviews already with Gene Vickery, who is a commissioner there from Miami County, who used to be in the state legislature, and we got his thoughts and his words and his opinions on LAVTR and the importance of it for local county government. Now that he's a Miami County commissioner, he really is truly an advocate for it because he realizes just how important that funding is. And then we've also already interviewed Bill Clifford, who's from Finney County, and he's a House Republican. And so he is a proponent of LAVTR funding, being a former county commissioner and so on and so forth. And then we also have an appointment next Monday to be interviewing the House Minority Leader, Vic Miller. And we're also going to be interviewing a local Topeka businessman, Joe Cecil, who has got some really strong opinions on taxes and property taxes, as he's a business owner who pays quite a bit in property tax. And so we're going to take those 4 interviews and kind of stitch them together into a 4 or 5 minute video that will be a professionally done video that will tell the story of LAVTR and why it should be supported and why it should be passed by the state legislature. And we're going to encourage everybody across the state of Kansas to watch that video. And then we also are going to take a few of the pieces of information that don't make it into that video, because keep in mind, 4 or 5 minutes goes awfully quick, and we've had lots of great conversations already, and I suspect we're going to continue to have good conversations with the next 2 interviewees. We're going to take bits and pieces and sound bites and create little vignettes, 30-second long or 45-second long, high impact statements. And we're going to make those available for you to push those out through social media outlets to just kind of keep that conversation going. Just a way to just push out a real quick, I can't call it Twitter anymore, but to push out a tweet about LAVTR and why it's important to fund it. And so we're going to be using the leftovers, or the cutting room floor leftovers, to make those little vignettes. So we'll have a series of those, and we're going to post those to this website as well, and as well as Kim pushing that information out to you. And then last but not least, and Shane, I apologize for calling you out. Shane Kroll down in Miami County when I was down there. He's got a really interesting story about LAVTR. He's lived that history. And so I'm going to be putting together a podcast with him. So it's on my list of things to do, is to interview him and create a nice little podcast that people kind of can listen to as they're driving in the car or doing whatever it is they're doing. And it talks a little bit, and we're hoping he'll kind of enlighten us about where we were and the importance of that funding for local county government. And so be looking on for that to come out as well. So we've got a whole bunch of information. We've got a lot of stuff going on, but I say that there's room for more. So with that said, I'd like to open it up to questions and comments. If you folks have some feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. If you have other conversational starters that you think we need to be talking about, we're open ears. Anything that you think is going to help you tell your LAVTR story, we are more than willing to help create that and get it pushed out so that everybody can benefit from it. Because quite frankly, that's where we feel like we're putting all of our eggs in the community basket. I don't think it's going to take, whining and dining the Senate president or backroom, deals with cigars and brandy at the still of the night. We're hoping that we're banking on just public press. We're banking on all of you informing all of your friends and family and relatives about this money that's rightfully theirs. Because we've been saying it's tax money that they're paying twice, because they pay it once when they go to the store and purchase the goods and services that are being taxed. And then they pay it the second time when that money doesn't come back to the county. They're paying it a second time in their property tax bill. So that's the message that we're trying to get to folks, is that you're already paying this money in, and it's money that the state owes the county. And when they don't pay it, citizens have to pay it again. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike or Kim or anybody that has questions or comments. We'd love to get your feedback.
Yeah, I'll jump back in, Bruce. The political landscape of this, it is going to be an uphill climb. The Senate President, Ty Masterson, does not like this program. He says that the money was, quote, never worked as intended, which we're going to have to disprove that statement. The head of the House, Dan Hawkins out of Wichita, doesn't like this program. And so we're going to have an uphill climb with the leadership there. I know that Adam Smith, who is the chairman of the House Tax Committee, and he's a former Wallace County commissioner, had an interesting quote. He said, "It's just not popular, and it's something that the Democrats have kind of latched onto recently because they know the Republicans won't fund it." So he's taken the viewpoint, and he is a Republican, but he's taken the viewpoint that it's going to be caught up in this political tug of war and used as an issue. And keep in mind that the entire Senate and the entire House will be up for re-election next year. So this legislative session, you're going to see a lot of those popular issues that play to the various bases of voters. I saw another question. I'll just quickly, yes, in terms of the public information campaign, just some of the ideas that I had was these videos that are put together. It would be easy if you had downloads on a flash drive, take them to your Rotary Club, take them to your Kiwanis Club, what other organizations you belong to. I would also say if you show up at Eggs and Issues breakfasts or legislative coffees, have this on your list to ask a question about it in front of the others that are there and put that legislator on the spot, at least raise the awareness level of it. The other thing that I was thinking we should do when the time is right, close to the session, is go to the editorial board of the Kansas City Star or the Wichita Eagle, talk to them and make a case and see if we can't get some editorial support from those publications. And also in your smaller towns, go to your local radio station if they've got news, or go to your local newspaper publisher and talk to them about it and see if we can't get some articles. So those are just some of the quick thoughts I've had about how we can try to raise public awareness. I am a big supporter in past work I've done of grassroots support. It's one way that we can overcome those political hurdles that those of us as county officials, representing county officials, can't necessarily do. If you get citizens worked up, that goes a long, long way. So I'll stop there and we can take more questions. Kim or Bruce?
Okay, so I see a lot of questions down here on the in the chat, and I think we've kind of worked our way through a couple of them already. If I think you folks are aware, because one of the questions came from Nikki, and so Nikki, we do have that spreadsheet, and that's exactly what that's designed to do, is to give you an estimate of how much money we're talking, both in real dollars and also in mil equivalents. And then I appreciate. Okay, so Mike, I think you just answered Monica, who wrote in, do you predict resistance from legislator because of the reduction in food tax? And let me add to what Mike said. Not only is the House and the Senate leadership opposed to this, but I hate to say this as well, the governor is not fully on board either. In fact, Jay and I had a sit-down meeting, and I think Mike and I had a sit-down meeting. I guess it was just Jay and I. Mike, you were with the minority leader, and he's all for it. But with the governor, we sat down with the governor's budget director, and point blank, he said, fellas, he goes, I have to be honest with you. He said, there's not enough bang for the buck here. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money, but it's not a splashy show like food tax reduction. It doesn't have a catchy slogan. It doesn't mean a lot, in public press. And so he's not necessarily saying that that's probably something that the governor's interested in funding, but we need to change that mindset. We need to change that mindset that it's dollar for dollar reduction in the property tax collection that the counties are going to have to make. And so it's going to help. It's definitely going to help every taxpayer who pays a property tax bill. And then Vivian, I appreciate you. She's asking, are you planning a public education awareness campaign as well, or are we focusing only on communication with legislators? And so and then she goes on to say, I'm asking because as a government PIO, there are limits to advocacy messages I can share directly with the public. As you know, public education is fine, but advocacy is not. And so I think you're right. There's a fine line, and I'm not quite sure where that line becomes, because you're right. When you start talking about, well, what's rightfully owed to counties and what can be done about it, it boils down to simply funding LAVTR. And so hopefully the information that we're providing you meets those needs. It educates the public, and then it engages the public in a way that says, hey, all I need to do is talk to my legislature to support LAVTR funding.
Right.
If you think there's something other than what we're providing you that would be beneficial to you, let us know, because we certainly would be willing to tailor anything that we've got to make it more about education and less about advocacy.
Right. The talking points that I wrote, which I'll send out in my State House News to commissioners, and hopefully they share it with staff. are written just as factual points. So you could almost take that, put your own, letterhead or logo on it. It doesn't advocate necessarily, or you could tweak the parts. It's just facts about it. And if you could put that out, it falls short of being saying the legislature should start refunding this. You could just print it as facts, and that would not cross that line. So, but it would still get the message out about how much money that is being kept from us.
And then Commissioner Ford out in Riley County, John, I appreciate your comments. He says, how can we work with the House and the Senate leadership to make it palatable for them and to work together and negotiate a plan that will work for everybody? And if I had the magic sprinkle dust to sprinkle on this, I would in a heartbeat. I don't know what that conversation needs to look like, other than the law is the law. And I mean, everybody's clamoring for property tax reduction. This is true property tax reduction. And their argument is, well, counties don't use that money appropriately. Well, we have to. There's no way about not using that money appropriately. We have to reduce the mill levy dollar for dollar. And so there's not any way around that. So those are the types of questions that we need to definitely make sure that we're talking to our state legislators about, is that money has a pre-described way that we have to use those dollars, and there's no way about it. So I guess we have to just wait to see, once we get into the battle, what sort of resistance we're getting, because I'm thinking that if we can get the public opinion going, that's going to definitely be on our side, because it's not that we're asking for more money. We're not asking the state to fund unfunded mandates. We're not asking them to give us more dollars so that because we need more dollars to spend. We're asking them to give us the money that's rightfully owed to counties that they are already collecting and choosing to withhold. I mean, I'm not quite sure how somebody could side skirt that argument, and make it look like they're not doing anything wrong. So
First, Trish is asking a question that's really kind of critical here. Playing devil's advocate, she says, how do you prevent counties from just banking on those dollars and in turn not actually being a savings to taxpayers? That is a big argument that we're going to have to counter. In fact, I mentioned Senate President Ty Masterson. He says, and I'm going to quote, counties failed to use the money to reduce property taxes, but rather used it to just spend more money. So that's a belief that's out there. And I think we are going to have to address that and show that we do have to reduce it dollar for dollar. I think the argument is that you can reduce down and then cheat on other ways that you collect more money, particularly if appraisals have gone up. So that's one that we are going to have to actually work with. And county officials need to understand that the LAVTR money has to be used for dollar reduction, because if they do start playing games with it, it's going to undo everything that we're trying to accomplish.
okay, so we're kind of scrolling through the comments here and the questions, and Greg McKinley writes, are the counties represented by Senate leadership on board with this push? They might have more influence. Mike, I don't know. Do you have a good take on who's on board in terms of counties and who's not?
Yeah, a little bit. Ty Masterson, I keep mentioning him, but he's from Andover. His brother is actually on the Butler County Commission. And from what I understand from Dan Wajak and others in Butler County, they don't see eye to eye on that. In fact, Ty's brother calls him occasionally and says, "What the hell are you doing?" So
Yeah.
I don't know how helpful that's going to be, but there are some connections there. And as you mentioned in reference, we do have several legislators who have been county commissioners, and so hopefully they haven't forgotten from whence they came.
So Mark has suggested, I think we need to change the name from local ad valorem tax relief. That's actually reduction, but I understand, to local property tax relief. And that's not anything that we came up with. That's actually the law. So that's how the law is written. But I appreciate that. And I do know that in the narrative. We do talk about property tax reduction, even though the title is LAVTR. We do talk about it, that it is dollar for dollar property tax reduction. And so we kind of spell it out, but we certainly will make sure that we are doing that as clearly as we can possibly, but the law is that it just says it's LAVTR, local ad valorem tax reduction. In fact, it's LAVTRF. You'll hear some of the state legislators refer to it as LAVTRF. They call it the local ad valorem tax reduction fund is what they call it. So, because it is a fund.
Yeah. And a little quick history on that. Back in 03, when they stopped it, it used to be known, and this gets into some of the legislative lingo, it was known as a demand transfer, which meant that the money had to be automatically transferred from the state coffers into the LAVTR fund and distributed to the cities and counties. The League of Kansas Municipalities sued over that point back in 2003 and said, you're breaking the law. It's a demand transfer. You can't decide that you're just not going to pay it. So before that actually went to court, the legislature had reconvened and they changed the law to make it a discretionary fund. So it mooted the point for the lawsuit because they said, well, we've changed the law. It's now discretionary. And it's still on the books, but every year what they do in the budget, when it comes to that line, they put a proviso over in this right-hand column over here that says will not be paid this year. So that's what they've done now for the past 20 years, is just chosen deliberately not to pay it. I'll make another point while I'm on is property taxes are going to be one of the hottest topics in the 2024 session. There's all kinds of proposals out there, including constitutional amendment that would cap the way properties can be appraised or the increases that they can have. There'll be a number of other looks at homestead, which they talk about year after year. So LAVTR will just be one more part of a larger discussion about property taxes. It is a very, very hot topic because everyone's values pretty much everywhere in the state are going up. And so some counties, even with revenue neutral, are choosing to not necessarily lower the mill levy commensurate with what the appraisals have gone up. So it's going to be a very hot topic. So there'll be all kinds of things that we'll probably be weighing in on regarding constitutional amendments to homestead, to all kinds of other things, including LAVTR.
And Commissioner Dennis down in Sedgwick County, appreciate your question because, and it's the right question. Commissioner Dennis writes, if the legislature doesn't want to send the funds back to the county, can't they just change the statute to eliminate this? If so, how do we counter this? And Mike, you kind of talked about it. You kind of gave us the foreshadowing. But at the same time, I think that's why we want to make this a public issue. If it's just us online that know about it and are trying to raise the stink, they can change the law because we don't, elect them by ourselves solely. However, if we can create enough awareness with our friends, our family, and our constituents and our fellow citizens, and they're aware of this situation, it becomes much more difficult for them to head to Topeka here in a couple of months and start tinkering with this to try to side skirt it. So that's our thought anyway, and we're open to hearing if you don't think that mindset is the right mindset. But like I said earlier, we're trying to use popular press. We're trying to use all of that energy. I don't know if you know, there's a big group down in Miami County that are up in arms about their valuations and property taxes and so on and so forth, and they're very vocal about it. Well, we want to make sure that group is aware of this so that when the legislative session starts up, they are advocating for this, that they know that there's this funding source that's not being met, that the state's holding on to during this time of wealth with billions of dollars in extra excess funds. We want to make sure that the public is aware that this is one of those bills that the state's not paying. And as a result, you're paying it twice.
Yeah. And back to Commissioner Dennis, yes, they could actually eliminate it from the statutes. In fact, maybe 5 years ago, there was a bill. I testified against it in House Tax. At that time, I was representing the Unified Government of Willamette County. they wanted to remove the LAVTR language from the statutes and simply just do away with it. There were enough of us that objected to that we were able to get them to not advance that bill out of the tax committee, so the issue died. But they have made that attempt in the past.
So, and then Commissioner Lowry up in Leavenworth County, we certainly do appreciate you joining us and weighing in. And we also appreciate your patience and working with us, because I think you probably are not too far off. And you write Leavenworth County Board. Let me see here. Oh, here it is. Leavenworth County Board has planned to launch a class action lawsuit to get the state to restore LAVTR. If after next session is not successful, we are hoping to get a list of others that would like to join out of this effort. So, you know, I think once we kind of make this issue known across the state with many citizens and many folks in different areas of the state, I think you're going to have a lot more success with a lawsuit if it comes down to that. You know, we certainly don't want to go there, because we'd like to see that the legislature is cooperating with us and giving you all the resources that you need to do the job that you're being asked to do legally. But if it comes to that, then we'll cross that bridge. But we certainly do appreciate you weighing in and having that mindset and being patient enough to work with us on this event right now. And then Kim's been great. Thank you, Kim, for posting all of those links and all those other pieces of information of issues that we're talking about here this afternoon. So lots of stuff going on already. It was great to read that article out of the Wichita Eagle, and I think there was one that appeared in the Kansas City Star as well, talking about property tax, and it specifically mentions LAVTR and how it's not being funded and what it would do for local taxpayers. So I appreciate it. And that was unsolicited by us. That was something that they put together. So it was great to see that article come out. All righty, folks. Well, I'll tell you what, I think we've kind of gone through all the questions. If you have other suggestions, like I said earlier, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help you, and you are here to help yourselves and to help each other get the word out that this is coming, and we're going to be advocating for this for the next 3, 4, 5 months. And so anything that you guys can do to help us, that would be great. Anything we can do to help you, that would be even better. So with that, Kim, I'm going to turn it back over to you and kind of wrap up however you wrap up.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruce and Mike, both, for a wonderful presentation. It's kind of a little bit different that you've actually walked through some of the tools. Unfortunately, we didn't get to watch all the videos in that because you all's time is very precious, but I would encourage each of you to take the time to go through each one of those tools. And if you have any issues, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I know that I had somebody already emailed about one of the videos, and they took the video to IT and it worked for IT. So, you know, please be sure to shout at us and let us know. As well, if a Q&A might be something, frequently asked questions would be helpful as we go further down the road with this. Please know that we would love to put together a document such as that, and so send those up our way. I mean, KAC and Mike with Strategy Consultants with the KCCA, we are here to help you get the word out to the public. And Vivian, that kind of goes back to your question. Yes, we want to really, and as Mike stated, have this be a grassroots movement coming from Kansans themselves. So that's where we're going to probably see you know, a lot more action happening than if Mike and Jay and Bruce and whoever else keeps going just back to the same people in the legislature. So let's see what we can do with this. We have the tools that are done right now, and as we add new tools, those I'll share out in the weekly newsletter so that you're aware. But please, again, just let us know what we can do to help you, and know that we appreciate all the work that you all are doing each and every day. You are valued highly by us, and we just want you to know that. I do not have yet our August Connecting Kansas Counties. I've got some things in the work and I'm just waiting for some confirmations. So stay tuned for more information to come. Also, I know everybody's excited to learn more about the when the Kansas Association of Counties annual conference and exposition is opening. I know that you are all waiting on pins and needles. Stay tuned. I said July. July is almost over, so it is getting very, 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 very close. So watch your emails because you should be seeing some information coming out by the end of next week. So just so that you know, stay tuned for that. And also just know that we have a couple of big webinars happening next week. Those have been sent out. They'll come out again tomorrow as a reminder for you. And then on the far horizon, KAC will be circling back around with partners, and we'll be talking more about the Kansas Infrastructure Hub and the bill, if you remember the BIL funding. That is coming at the end of August, on August 28th. KAC and the League of Kansas Municipalities, along with Economic Lifelines, will be, and KDOT, of course, will be talking about that monumental funding package. And so lots on the horizon as always. And with that, we want to wrap up. Thank you all for joining us. We wish you a cool afternoon, and let's all get out and do a little, is there such thing as a heat dance or a rain dance or a cold snow dance? Whatever you want to do to get the temperatures down a little bit. Let's see if we can all do that. And you all stay cool, take care, and have a great Kansas day. We'll see you next month. Bye-bye.